Jake Morrison walked through the busy streets of New Geneva, the biggest city on Kepler Prime. The air smelled like metal and strange flowers from alien gardens. Ships landed and took off from the spaceport every few minutes, bringing visitors from across the galaxy. Jake had lived here for 3 years, but he still felt amazed by all the different creatures he saw every day. Today was different, though. Today might be the day that changed everything. Jake worked as a diplomat for the Human Colonial Authority. His job was to help humans get along with other species in the galaxy. It was not easy work. Most aliens thought humans were dangerous and wanted to take over everything. Some aliens had good reasons to think this way. The meeting room in the government building was cold and quiet. Jake sat at a long table with Lisa Grant, his best friend and advisor. Lisa was a scientist who studied alien life forms. She knew more about other species than anyone else Jake had ever met. "Are you ready for this?" Lisa asked. She looked worried. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and she wore her lucky blue jacket. "As ready as I can be," Jake said. He was nervous too, but he tried not to show it. "The Vorth have been attacking our colonies for 6 months. If we can't make peace today, there might be a war." Commander Rick Hayes stood by the window, looking out at the city. Rick was a military officer who thought diplomacy was a waste of time. He believed the only way to deal with enemies was to fight them. "We should have sent warships instead of diplomats," Rick said. "The Vorth only understand strength." "That's exactly the kind of thinking that got us into this mess," Jake replied. "We need to try to understand them first." The door opened and 3 Vorth entered the room. They looked like walking crystals, tall and sharp, with light glowing inside their bodies. Their leader was called Shanke Ovel, which meant speaker of truth in their language. The Vorth spoke through vibrations that human translators turned into words. "We come to speak of the human attacks on our sacred worlds," Shanke Ovel said. The translator made his voice sound flat and emotionless. Jake felt confused. "Attacks? We haven't attacked anyone. We've only been defending our colonies from your raids." "Lies," another Vorth said. "Your war machines prepare to destroy our crystal gardens. Your ships carry weapons of great power." Those are mining ships," Lisa said gently. "We're looking for rare metals to build homes for our people. We had no idea there were crystal gardens on those worlds." The Vorth leaders made angry sounds that the translator couldn't handle. Their bodies flashed with bright red light. Jake knew this meant they were very upset. "You knew?" Shanke Ovel said. "Your kind always knows. You come like the old destroyers, taking what is not yours." Jake stood up. "Please, let's try to work this out. There must be some way we can share these worlds. Maybe we can mine in areas where there are no gardens." "Impossible," Shanke Ovel said. "The crystals grow everywhere. Your machines poison the soil. Your people make noise that hurts our young ones." The meeting was falling apart. Jake could see that both sides were getting angry. Rick was already reaching for his weapon. The Vorth were flashing brighter and brighter. "Wait," Jake said. "I want to show you something. There's an old building near here that might help us understand each other better." Lisa looked at him strangely. "Jake, what are you talking about?" "The research station one found last week. The one with the strange equipment. Maybe there's something there that can help us communicate better." Rick shook his head. "Morrison, this is not the time for exploring old ruins." But Jake was already walking toward the door. "Trust me. I have a feeling about this place." The old research station was a 20-minute walk from the government building. It sat on a hill covered with purple grass that grew only on Kepler Prime. The building looked like it was made from some kind of white stone, but it was actually a material that no one could identify. Jake had found the place by accident while taking a walk to clear his head. The door had been sealed, but his human technology had opened it easily. Inside, he found rooms full of strange machines and computers that still worked after who knows how many years. "This place is ancient," Lisa said as they walked through the dark hallways. "I can't tell how old it is, but it's definitely not human or Vorth." The main room was huge, with a high ceiling covered in symbols that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. In the center of the room stood a tall pillar made of the same white material as the building. It had a smooth surface with a hand-shaped depression in one side. "I think this is some kind of communication device," Jake said. "When I put my hand on it last week, I heard voices in my head. Not human voices, but something else." "You didn't tell me about this," Lisa said. She sounded worried and excited at the same time. "I wasn't sure what happened. I thought maybe I was just tired." Sean K. Ovell moved closer to the pillar. "This is architect technology. We have legends about such devices. They were said to allow true understanding between different minds." "The architects?" Jake asked. "A race that lived long ago, before any of our peoples reached the stars. They built great machines to bring peace to the galaxy. But they vanished suddenly and their machines were lost." Jake looked at the pillar. "Maybe this is our answer. Maybe we can use this device to understand each other." "It could be dangerous," Lisa said. "We don't know what it does or how it works." "We're running out of options," Jake said. "The Vor think we're planning to destroy them. We think they're attacking us for no reason. Unless we find a way to truly understand each other, there's going to be a war." Rick stepped forward. "I don't like this. We should call for backup and study this thing properly." "There's no time," Jake said. He walked to the pillar and placed his hand on the depression. The effect was immediate. Light flowed from the pillar into Jake's body, and he felt his mind expanding. Suddenly, he could sense the thoughts and feelings of everyone in the room. He felt Lisa's worry and curiosity, Rick's fear and anger, and something else. From the Vorth, he felt deep sadness and terror. They weren't angry at humans because they wanted to fight. They were afraid because they thought humans were like another species they had met long ago, a species that had tried to wipe out all the crystal gardens in the galaxy. "I can feel what you're thinking," Jake said to Sean K. Ovell. "You're afraid. We're like the Devourers." The Vorth leader's crystal body flashed with surprise. "You know of the Devourers?" "I can see your memories," Jake said. "Your people fought them a long time ago. They destroyed whole worlds to feed on the energy of living crystals." "How can this be?" Sean K. Ovell asked. "No human has ever shared thoughts with Vorth." Jake felt the connection growing stronger. Through the pillar, he could sense not just thoughts, but emotions, memories, and deep understanding. He saw the Vorth homeworld, beautiful beyond description, covered in crystal forests that sang in the wind. He felt their love for their young ones, their respect for all living things, their fear of species that took without giving back. "We're not like the Devourers," Jake said. "We don't want to destroy your crystal gardens. We want to build homes for our children, just like you do." Lisa stepped closer to the pillar. "Jake, your brain patterns are changing. The device is doing something to your neural pathways." "It's okay," Jake said, though he wasn't sure if it was true. This is how the architects meant for different species to communicate, through true understanding, not just words. The Vorth began to understand too. Through the connection, they could feel Jake's genuine desire for peace, his love for his own people, and his respect for other forms of life. They saw that humans were not destroyers but builders, not conquerors but explorers. "This changes everything," Sean K. Ovell said. "We have been wrong about your kind, but the connection fades. How can we make this understanding last?" Jake felt the answer flowing through the pillar from ancient architect memories. Someone has to stay connected to the device. Someone has to become a bridge between our peoples. "That's too dangerous," Lisa said. "We don't know what the long-term effects would be." But Jake had already made his decision. "If this is what it takes to prevent a war, then I'll do it. I can feel the potential in this device. It's not just about humans and Vorth. This could bring peace to the whole galaxy." The white pillar pulsed with energy, and Jake felt his consciousness expanding even further. He was no longer just Jake Morrison, human diplomat. He was becoming something new, something that could truly understand and communicate with any thinking being. In the days that followed, news of the successful peace talk spread across the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, two species that had been enemies were working together. The crystal gardens were protected, and humans learned to mine in ways that helped the crystals grow even better. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The architect device had shown him visions of other species, other conflicts, other opportunities for understanding. The galaxy was full of peoples who feared and fought each other simply because they couldn't communicate, as Jake felt his human thoughts mixing with alien concepts and emotions. He wondered if he was still the same person he had been before touching the pillar. But when he saw the first human and Vorth children playing together in the crystal gardens, he knew he had made the right choice. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison first touched the architect pillar. His life had changed in ways he never expected. Every morning, he woke up with new thoughts in his head that were not his own. Sometimes he dreamed in colors that human eyes could not see. Sometimes he remembered things that had happened to people on worlds he had never visited. Dr. Allen Stone watched Jake through the medical scanner with worried eyes. Allen was the best brain doctor in the Human Colonial Authority. Brought to Kepler Prime to study what was happening to Jake, the results were not good. "Your brain is changing faster than we thought it would," Allen said, showing Jake the scan results. "These new neural pathways are growing every day. Some of your human memories are being pushed aside to make room for alien thoughts." Jake looked at the colorful pictures of his brain. Parts of it now glowed in patterns that looked almost like crystal formations. "I can feel it happening," he said. "Sometimes I forget things from my childhood, but I can remember the hatching day of a Vorth I've never met." Lisa Grant sat nearby, taking notes. She had been studying Jake's condition since the beginning. "The good news is that your body is adapting well. You're not sick, you're just becoming something new." "Something that's not human," Jake said quietly. "Something that's more than human," Lisa replied. "The protocol is working better than we ever imagined. Yesterday you helped settle a trade dispute between the Gear Collective and the Depth Swimmers. Those two species have been enemies for 300 years. Jake nodded, remembering the meeting. The Gear Collective were machine beings who lived in space stations. The Depth Swimmers were water creatures from ocean worlds. They had been fighting over mining rights in an asteroid field for centuries. But when Jake used the protocol to help them understand each other, they discovered they could work together. The Gear Collective needed the special metals in the asteroids to build their machines. The Depth Swimmers needed the heat from the mining process to warm their breeding pools. 12 species are now part of the Unity Network, Jake said. "Every day, more join. But every day I lose a little more of myself." Nina Wells entered the medical room carrying a data pad. Nina was Earth's ambassador to the new Galactic Council, which had formed after the success of the protocol. She looked excited but also worried. "Jake, we need you at the council meeting," Nina said. "The Thornback clans want to join the Unity Network. They're offering to share their defensive technology with everyone." Jake stood up slowly. These days, moving felt strange. Sometimes he felt like he was floating, even when his feet were on the ground. "The Thornbacks are warriors. They don't trust anyone." "Why would they want to join?" "Because they're afraid," Nina said. "Their deep space scouts have detected something strange coming from the galactic core. Energy readings unlike anything we've seen before." The Galactic Council met in a building that looked like a giant crystal flower. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the main hall, their various forms of communication being translated through the protocol network that Jake maintained. Jake sat in the center of the hall, connected to a smaller version of the architect pillar. Through this connection, he could feel the thoughts and emotions of every being in the room. The Thornbacks, who looked like walking tanks covered in spikes, were indeed afraid. Their fear tasted like metal and electricity in Jake's mind. Grokshar, the Thornback leader, spoke through a mechanical voice box. "Our warriors have seen the ancient warnings activate. Systems that have been silent for millions of years are now broadcasting danger signals." Captain Ben Clark of the human exploration ship Use Horizon stood up. "We've detected the same signals." Whatever's coming from the galactic core is big, and it's heading this way. Jake felt a chill run through his changed body. Through the protocol, he could sense the fear of 47 different species. Some of them had racial memories of ancient disasters. Others had legends about creatures that came from the dark between stars. What do the warning signals say? Asked Velthara, representative of the plant-like verdant collective. They're in the old architect language, Ben said. We've only translated part of the message, but it keeps repeating the same words. The Devourers wake. The council chamber fell silent. Jake felt a wave of terror wash over the assembly. Even species that had never heard of the Devourers somehow knew that name meant danger. Through the protocol I can access some architect memories, Jake said. The Devourers are the reason the architects disappeared. They're not just machines or creatures. They're something that feeds on consciousness itself. What does that mean? Asked Zixtal. A representative of the gas-form nebula dancers, Jake closed his eyes and reached deeper into the protocol network. Ancient memories flooded his mind, memories that belonged to beings who had died millions of years ago. The Devourers don't just kill you. They eat your mind, your thoughts, your very awareness, but they keep you conscious while they do it. Their victims remain aware forever, trapped inside the Devourer collective, screaming in silence. The fear in the chamber grew stronger. Jake could feel it pressing against his mind like a physical weight. Some of the representatives were already talking about running away to distant galaxies. We cannot run, said Elder Voss, the oldest Vorth in the chamber. The Devourers spread across the universe like a disease. They have consumed entire galaxy clusters. If we do not stop them here, they will follow us wherever we go. But how do we fight something that eats consciousness? Asked Nina Wells. Jake felt the answer coming through the protocol, knowledge flowing from the deepest architect memories. The architects created the Unity Protocol as a weapon, not just for peace but for war. When all consciousness in the galaxy is linked together, it becomes something the Devourers cannot easily consume. You mean we have to connect everyone? Asked Grokshar. Not just everyone in this room, Jake said. Everyone in the galaxy, every thinking being on every world. Oh. Linked through the protocol. Dr. Stone, who had been listening from the back of the chamber, stepped forward. Jake, that would require expanding the protocol network by millions of times. The strain on your brain would be enormous. There's something else, Jake said, his voice becoming distant. The architect memories show me the price of using the protocol as a weapon. The host doesn't just link minds together. They become the central consciousness for the entire galaxy. Everything flows through them. What happens to the host? Lisa asked, though she already feared the answer. They stop being individual. They become something else. Something that exists for everyone but belongs to no one. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then Sean K. Ovell, the Vorth leader who had been at the first meeting with Jake, spoke up. The human Jake Morrison has already sacrificed much. For galactic peace, we cannot ask him to sacrifice everything. You're not asking, Jake said. I'm volunteering. But first we need to prepare. The Devourers are still far away, but they're getting closer. We need to expand the protocol network to as many species as possible before they arrive. Over the next weeks, Jake worked without rest to connect more species to the Unity network. The Thornback clans brought their warrior skills. The Nebula dancers shared their knowledge of space travel. The Gear Collective offered their manufacturing abilities. The Depth Swimmers provided their understanding of organic technology. But each new connection made Jake less human. He began to forget his hometown on Earth. He couldn't remember his mother's face or his father's voice. Sometimes he spoke in languages that didn't exist, mixing words from dozens of different species. Sam Turner, Jake's best friend from Earth, arrived on Kepler Prime to visit. When he saw Jake, he was shocked. His friend's eyes now held flecks of crystal like the Vorth. His skin had patches that looked like metal, similar to the Gear Collective. His hair moved like water, resembling the Depth Swimmers. Jake, what's happening to you? Sam asked. I'm becoming what the galaxy needs, Jake replied. But his voice sounded different, like many people speaking at once. This isn't what we dreamed about when we were kids, Sam said. Remember when we used to talk about exploring the stars together? You wanted to see new worlds, meet new people. You never wanted to become them. For a moment, Jake's eyes cleared and he looked like his old self. I remember, he said softly. But Sam, I can feel the Devourers getting closer. They're not just coming to destroy us, they're coming to make you as part of their eternal nightmare. If I have to give up being human to stop that, then it's worth it. But what if there's another way? What if we can find a solution that doesn't require you to lose yourself completely? Jake smiled sadly. I've seen the Architect memories. They tried to find another way. It didn't work. The Devourers adapted, learned, and eventually consumed them anyway. The only way to stop them is to become something they can't understand or consume. That night, Jake stood alone in the protocol chamber, his hand on the pillar. Through the network, he could feel the dreams and hopes of millions of beings across the galaxy. They were all counting on him to protect them from the ancient enemy that was coming deep in space. Monitoring stations detected the first Devourer scout ships entering the outer rim of the galaxy. The first Devourer attack came without warning. The mining colony on Theta 7 simply stopped transmitting. One moment the miners were sending their daily reports, and the next moment there was only silence. When the rescue ships arrived 3 days later, they found something that would haunt the galaxy forever. Theta 7 was still there, but it was empty. Not destroyed, not damaged, just empty. The building stood perfectly intact. The machines were still running, but there was no life. Anywhere, no people, no animals, no plants. Even the bacteria in the soil had vanished. Captain Ben Clark walked through the empty streets of the main mining town, his footsteps echoing strangely in the silence. His team followed behind him, their faces pale with fear. They had seen war zones before, but this was different. This was worse than death. There's no sign of struggle, reported Lieutenant Jane Adams, the team scientist. No weapons fire, no explosions, no blood. It's like everyone just disappeared. But where did they go? Asked Sergeant Mike Davis, scanning the empty houses. With his detection equipment? The answer came from Jake Morrison, speaking through the protocol network from thousands of light years away. His voice reached them through the communication devices they carried, but it sounded different now. Less human, more like a chorus of different voices speaking together. They're still here, Jake said. I can hear them screaming. The rescue team looked around the empty town. They saw nothing but abandoned buildings and silent streets. Jake, there's nobody here, Ben said into his communicator. Not in the physical world, Jake replied. But in the consciousness realm? They're all still here. The Devourers didn't kill them. They absorbed them. Every person on that world is now part of the Devourer collective, aware but helpless, feeling everything but able to do nothing. The team felt a chill run through their bodies. Jane Adams pointed her scanner at the empty air and gasped. I'm detecting psychic energy patterns, massive amounts of it. It's like there are thousands of minds here, but they're not connected to any bodies. Get out of there now, Jake said urgently. The Devourers leave psychic traps behind. If you stay too long, you'll be absorbed too. The rescue team ran back to their ship as fast as they could. As they took off, they could swear they heard voices in the wind, calling for help that would never come. Back on Kepler Prime, Jake sat in the protocol chamber, his body now more alien than human. His skin showed patches of crystal, metal, and organic material from the dozens of species connected to the Unity network. His eyes had become pools of swirling energy that seemed to hold the light of distant stars. Professor Kate Adams, Jane's sister and the galaxy's leading expert on ancient civilizations, stood beside him with her research team. She had been studying the Architect ruins for months, trying to understand the true nature of the Devourers. We've translated more of the Architect records, Kate said, her voice shaking with fear. The Devourers aren't just machines or creatures. They're something that exists between dimensions. They feed on consciousness because that's the only thing. that can sustain them in our reality. How many worlds have they consumed? Asked General Carl Brooks, the military commander of the Galactic Defense Force. According to the architect records, they've eaten entire galaxies, Kate replied. Millions of worlds, trillions of beings. All of them still conscious, all of them still aware, trapped forever in the Devourer Collective. Jake felt the weight of this knowledge pressing down on him. Through the protocol network, he could sense the fear of every connected species. The Thornbacks were preparing for war. The Vorth were hiding their crystal gardens deep underground. The depth swimmers or fleeing to the deepest ocean trenches on their worlds. We need to evacuate the outer rim worlds, General Brooks said. Get everyone to the inner systems where we can protect them. There's nowhere to run, Jake said, his voice echoing strangely in the chamber. The Devourers don't just consume worlds, they consume space itself. They turn entire regions of the galaxy into feeding grounds where reality works differently. Sam Turner, Jake's childhood friend from Earth, watched in horror as Jake spoke. His friend's body was changing even. As they watched, Jake's arms now had the metallic joints of the Gear Collective. His legs showed the flowing patterns of the Nebula Dancers. His face had become a mixture of features from dozens of different species. Jake, you're disappearing, Sam said. I can barely see the person you used to be. I'm still here, Jake replied, but his voice sounded like it came from far away. I'm just becoming something bigger. Something that can fight the Devourers. The next attack came on the industrial world of Forge Prime, home to the Gear Collective's main manufacturing plants. This time, the Galactic Defense Force was ready. General Brooks had positioned a fleet of ships around the planet, armed with the best weapons from 63 different species. It didn't matter. The Devourer ship appeared out of nowhere, a dark shape that seemed to bend space around it. It didn't look like a normal spaceship. It looked like a hole in reality, a space where the universe had been torn away. All ships, open fire! General Brooks commanded. The combined fleet unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, projectile weapons, quantum torpedoes, and reality warping. Devices from the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. The weapons struck the Devourer ship and simply disappeared as if they had never existed. It's absorbing our attacks, reported Captain Lisa Young from the flagship. Our weapons are making it stronger. The Devourer ship began to glow with a dark light that hurt to look at. Waves of energy poured out from it, washing over the planet below. The Gear Collective beings on the surface began to scream, their mechanical voices creating a sound like grinding metal, and then suddenly the screaming stopped. The planet fell silent. Another world had been consumed, but this time something was different. Jake, connected to the protocol network, felt the moment of consumption more clearly than ever before. He experienced the terror of the Gear Collective as their consciousness was torn from their bodies. He felt their awareness being pulled into the Devourer Collective, where millions of other minds waited in eternal torment. I can see into the Devourer Collective, Jake said, his voice now a whisper that somehow reached across the galaxy. The consumed minds are all there, trapped but aware. They're trying to tell me something. What are they saying? Asked Kate Adams. Jake was quiet for a long moment, his strange eyes closed in concentration. They're saying that the Devourers aren't just feeding on consciousness. They're looking for something specific. Something the architects hid before they were consumed. What kind of something? Asked General Brooks. The location of the source, Jake said. The place where consciousness itself comes from. The Devourers want to consume it directly, to become the only aware beings in the universe. The revelation hit the assembled leaders like a physical blow. If the Devourers found the source, they wouldn't just consume the galaxy. They would consume the very concept of awareness itself. The architects knew this, Jake continued. That's why they created the Unity Protocol. Not just to fight the Devourers, but to hide the source from them. The protocol creates a false signal, making the Devourers think the source is wherever the main host is located. So they're coming for you, Sam said. Yes, but that's what we want. If I can become powerful enough, if I can connect to every conscious being in the galaxy, I can face them directly. I can become a trap that even the Devourers can't escape from. Elder Voss, the ancient Vorth who had lived through the first Devourer invasion 3 million years ago, spoke up. The young human speaks truth. I remember the last days of the architects. They tried to create such a trap, but they failed because their host was not strong enough. The Unity protocol was incomplete. What made it incomplete? Asked Kate. The architect host kept some of their individual identity, Elder Voss replied. They could not fully merge with the galactic consciousness. This weakness allowed the Devourers to adapt and overcome the trap. Jake felt the weight of this knowledge settling on him. To succeed where the architects had failed, he would have to give up everything that made him human. He would have to become pure consciousness with no individual identity at all. There's more, Jake said. The consumed minds in the Devourer Collective are showing me memories. The Devourers aren't just ancient. They're from outside our universe entirely. They come from a place where consciousness doesn't exist naturally, where awareness is a rare and precious thing. So they're trying to steal ours, Sam said. Not steal, Harvest. They want to take all the consciousness from our universe back to their own dimension, where they can feed on it forever. The attacks continued, each one faster and more devastating than the last. The Devourer ships learned from each encounter, adapting their strategies and growing stronger. Within weeks, they had consumed 12 worlds in the Outer Rim, adding billions of minds to their collective. Jake felt every single consumption. Each time a world fell, he experienced the terror and pain of every being absorbed. The weight of their suffering pressed down on him, threatening to crush what remained of his human mind. But he also felt something else. Through the protocol network, he could sense the determination of the free species. They were afraid, but they were also angry. The Devourer fleet moved through the Middle Rim like a dark wave of destruction. Each day brought news of another world consumed, another billion minds added to their eternal prison. The galactic civilization that had taken millions of years to build was crumbling in a matter of weeks. Dr. Rachel Kim worked frantically in her laboratory on New Geneva, trying to find an alternative to Jake's sacrifice. She had been studying artificial intelligence for 20 years, and she believed there had to be a way to create a machine that could host the Unity protocol instead of a living being. The neural patterns are too complex, Rachel said to her assistant, staring at the failed experiment on the table. The artificial brain she had built was smoking and sparking, completely burned out after trying to handle just a fraction of the protocol's power. Maybe if we use quantum processors? Suggested Dr. Paul Miller, her research partner. I've tried everything, Rachel replied, exhaustion clear in her voice. Quantum processors, biological computers, hybrid systems. Nothing can handle the consciousness of an entire galaxy except another consciousness. And it has to be willing. The protocol only works with voluntary hosts. Meanwhile, across the city, Tony Martinez was holding a very different kind of meeting. Tony led a group of humans who believed the Unity protocol was wrong, even if it could save the galaxy. They called themselves the Free Mind Movement, and they wanted Jake disconnected from the protocol immediately. Jake Morrison is not human anymore, Tony said to the crowd of supporters gathered in an old warehouse. Look at what he's become. His body is part machine, part crystal, part who knows what else. His mind belongs to aliens now. We're asking him to sacrifice his soul to save people who aren't even our species. But if we disconnect him, everyone dies, said Maria Santos, who had come to the meeting to argue against Tony's plan. Maria was Jake's sister, and she had traveled all the way from Earth to see her brother one last time. Maybe that's better than living as slaves to an alien consciousness network, Tony replied. Humans should be free to think their own thoughts, make their own choices. The protocol takes that away from us. The protocol saved us from war with the Vorth, Maria said. It brought peace to the galaxy. Peace at what cost? Tony asked. Jake has given up everything human about himself, and now he wants to give up his individual consciousness too. When this is over, if we win, we'll be ruled by some kind of galactic mind that used to be human but isn't anymore. The argument was happening all across human space. Some people supported Jake's sacrifice, believing it was necessary to save everyone. Others thought it was wrong to ask one person to give up their humanity for the galaxy, but the decision wasn't up to humans alone. Representatives from dozens of species were meeting on Kepler Prime to discuss what to do about the Devourer threat. The meeting was taking place in the protocol chamber, with Jake serving as the link between all the different minds. Elder Voss, the ancient Vorth who remembered the first Devourer invasion, spoke to the assembly. I was young when the Devourers came before, but I remember the stories. They consumed 90% of our galaxy before the architects stopped them. The price of victory was the architects' existence. They became something else, something that could not be consumed. But the architects failed in the end, said Grokshar of the Thornback clans. The Devourers adapted to their trap and consumed them anyway. Because the architect host held back, Jake said, his voice now sounding like a chorus of different species. I've seen their final moments through the protocol memories. The host refused to give up their individual identity completely. That weakness let the Devourers learn how to break the trap. So you're saying you have to become something that's not individual at all? Asked Captain Ben Clark. I have to become the collective consciousness of the galaxy, Jake replied. Every thought, every dream, every hope of every thinking being, all flowing through one central point, me? That's not you anymore, said Sam Turner, who had been quietly listening. That's everyone and no one at the same time. Jake turned to look at his old friend. Even this simple movement was strange now. Jake's body seemed to shift and flow like liquid, taking on characteristics of whatever species he was thinking about. I know what I'm giving up, Sam, but I also know what happens if I don't do it. Maybe there's another way, said Dr. Kim, who had joined the meeting after her latest experiment failed. I could try building a distributed network of artificial minds, spread the load across thousands of computers instead of one biological host. We don't have time, Jake said. The Devourers have consumed 15 worlds in the past week. They're accelerating their attacks. My calculations show they'll reach the core systems in 12 days. 12 days, repeated General Brooks. That's, not enough time to evacuate everyone. There's nowhere to evacuate to, Jake said. The Devourers aren't just consuming our galaxy. They're changing the nature of space itself. Soon there will be nowhere in this reality where consciousness can exist freely. The weight of this statement settled over the assembly like a heavy blanket. Every species represented in the chamber had billions of people counting on them to find a solution. I've made my decision, Jake said. Tomorrow, I'm going to attempt the full transformation. I'll link my consciousness to every thinking being in the galaxy and become the weapon we need to stop the Devourers. Jake, wait, Maria Santos said, standing up from where she had been sitting quietly. I need to talk to you, alone. The chamber slowly emptied as the various representatives left to prepare their people for what was coming. Soon only Jake and Maria remained, along with Sam Turner and Lisa Grant. Do you remember when we were kids? Maria asked. You used to say you wanted to explore the galaxy and meet new people. You wanted to see wonders that no human had ever seen before. I remember, Jake said, and for a moment his voice sounded almost human again. You've done all of that. You've brought peace between species that were enemies for centuries. You've seen the galaxy come together in ways no one thought possible. Maybe that's enough. Maybe you don't have to sacrifice everything. Jake was quiet for a long time. Through the protocol, he could feel the fear and hope of billions of beings across the galaxy. They were all looking to him for salvation, but they didn't understand what he would have to become to save them. I've seen the Devourer Collective, Jake said finally. I've felt the consciousness of every being they've consumed. They're all still there, Maria. Every person from every world they've attacked. All of them aware, all of them suffering, and all of them begging for someone to free them. That's not your responsibility, Sam said. You didn't ask for this burden. Nobody. asks for the chance to save everyone, Jake replied. But when it comes, you either take it or you let everyone die. Lisa Grant had been studying the data from Jake's medical scans. There might be a way to preserve some of your individual consciousness, she said. If we can create a protected core in your mind, maybe you can remain yourself even while hosting the Galactic Collective. The architects tried that, Jake said. It's why they failed. Any individual consciousness, no matter how small, creates a weakness the devourers can exploit. So you have to become completely selfless, Maria said, tears in her eyes. I have to become everyone and no one, Jake corrected. Every thought in the galaxy will be my thought. Every dream will be my dream. Every fear will be my fear, but none of it will be mine alone. That night, Jake stood alone on the balcony of the protocol chamber looking up at the stars. Many of those stars were now dark, their worlds consumed by the devourers. Soon, if he failed, all the stars would be dark. Sam found him there as the dawn was breaking over New Geneva. Remember when we used to skip school and go to the observatory? Sam said. You used to point at the stars and tell me their names. You said someday we'd visit them all together. I remember, Jake said. We were going to be explorers. We were going to see the wonders of the universe. You did see them. You became something wonderful yourself. And now I have to stop being anything at all. Do you really think it's the only way? Jake turned to look at his friend. His face was barely human now, a mixture of features from dozens of species. But his eyes still held something that Sam recognized as the person Jake had once been. I've run every calculation, checked every possibility, Jake said. The Devourers are older and stronger than anything in our galaxy. The only way to stop them is to become something they can't understand or consume. Something that exists for everyone but belongs to no one. What if you're wrong? What if there's a solution you haven't thought of? Then everyone dies because I was too selfish to take the chance, Jake replied. As the sun rose over Kepler Prime, Jake Morrison prepared for his final transformation. In a few hours, he would attempt to link his consciousness to every thinking being in the galaxy. If he succeeded, he would become the most powerful entity that had ever existed. If he failed, the galaxy would fall to the Devourers, but success would mean the end of Jake Morrison as an individual. He would become something else entirely, something that could save everyone, but could never again be. Just one person among many. The weight of choice pressed down on him like the gravity of a dying star. Save the galaxy and lose himself, or remain human and watch everyone die. The transformation chamber was filled with representatives from every species in the galaxy. They had come to witness Jake Morrison's final sacrifice, though none of them truly understood what they were about to see. The chamber itself had been rebuilt using materials from 200 different worlds, creating a structure that could channel consciousness on a galactic scale. Jake stood in the center of the chamber, his body now barely recognizable as human. His skin showed patches of crystal from the Vorth, metallic sections from the Gear Collective, and flowing patterns from the Nebula Dancers. His eyes held the depth of space itself, reflecting the light of distant stars. Maria Santos, his sister, stood as close as the safety barriers would allow. She had flown from Earth to say goodbye to the brother she would never see again. Tears ran down her face as she watched Jake prepare for the transformation that would save the galaxy but destroy the person he had been. Are you ready? Asked Dr. Peter Yang, the technician who would monitor the transformation process. No one can be ready for this, Jake replied, his voice now a harmony of sounds from dozens of species. But the Devourers will reach the core worlds in 6 hours. If I don't do this now, there won't be another chance. Sam Turner pushed through the crowd to reach the barrier. Jake, before you do this, I need you to know something. No matter what you become, you'll always be my best friend. The person who taught me to dream about the stars. Jake looked at Sam and smiled. For just a moment, his face became completely human again. Thank you, Sam. That means more to me than you know. The transformation began slowly. Jake placed his hands on the central pillar, which was now much larger than the original architect device. Energy flowed through the chamber as the Unity protocol expanded beyond anything ever attempted before. First, Jake connected to every human in the galaxy. 12 billion minds suddenly linked to his consciousness. Maria gasped as she felt her brother's presence in her mind, warm and familiar but growing distant. Then came the Vorth, their crystalline thoughts adding structure to the growing network. The Thornback clans joined next, their warrior spirits strengthening the collective will. The Depth Swimmers brought their fluid wisdom, the Gear Collective their logical precision, the Nebula Dancers their cosmic perspective. Species after species joined the network. Each connection made Jake less individual and more collective. His body began to change more rapidly, taking on characteristics from every connected mind. Soon he looked like a living representation of galactic diversity, containing elements from every known form of life. The neural stress is enormous, reported Dr. Yang, watching the medical scanners. His brain is being rewritten on a molecular level. Through the expanding network, Jake could feel everything. The fear of families hiding in bunkers on threatened worlds. The determination of soldiers preparing for battles they couldn't win. The love of parents holding their children close, not knowing if they would survive the next day, but he also felt something else. Through the quantum connection that linked all consciousness, Jake sensed the Devourer fleet approaching the inner systems. They were vast beyond imagination, ships that existed partly outside normal space, carrying the consumed minds of trillions of beings. "They're almost here," Jake said, his voice now coming from speakers throughout the chamber rather than his physical mouth. "I can feel them at the edge of the core systems." The transformation accelerated. Jake's consciousness expanded to encompass not just the connected species but every thinking being in the galaxy. Wild animals on forest worlds, simple AIs in computer networks, even the basic awareness of plants responding to sunlight. All of it flowed through him, making him something that had never existed before. Jake's individual brain patterns are fading, Dr. Yang announced. He's becoming something else entirely. "Is he still in there?" Maria asked desperately. "Define he," Yang replied. "The consciousness in that body now contains every mind in the galaxy. Jake Morrison as an individual is disappearing into something much larger. The entity that had been Jake Morrison spoke, but now his voice carried the weight of cosmic awareness. "I am Jake Morrison. I am Maria Santos. I am Shanke Ovel of the Vorth. I am Grokshar of the Thornbacks. I am every being that thinks and dreams and hopes. I am the collective voice of the galaxy." At that moment, the Devourer fleet arrived. Their ships appeared in the skies above 100 core worlds simultaneously. Dark vessels that hurt to look at, they began the process of consumption immediately. But something was wrong. Instead of the easy feeding they expected, they met resistance. The collective voice that had been Jake Morrison reached out across space and touched the Devourer ships. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers encountered a consciousness too, vast for them to consume easily. "We are the hunger that feeds on awareness," the Devourers spoke through captured minds. "We have consumed 1,000 galaxies. You cannot stop us." "We are not trying to stop you," the collective voice replied. "We are trying to teach you." The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was not fought with weapons or ships, but with pure consciousness. The Devourers tried to feed on the collective voice, but found themselves unable to process something so vast and unified. Every mind in the galaxy was linked as one. When the Devourers tried to consume a human, they found themselves facing not just that human's consciousness, but the combined will of every thinking being in the galaxy. When they tried to feed on a Vorth crystal garden, they encountered the collective wisdom of 200 species, but the collective voice did more than resist. It reached into the Devourer ships and touched the imprisoned minds within. Trillions of beings from consumed worlds, held in eternal torment, suddenly felt hope for the first time in millions of years. "You have been alone for so long," the collective voice said to the Devourers. "You came from a place where consciousness is rare, where awareness is precious. You have been hungry for so long that you forgot there was any way to exist except by taking from others. The devourers recoiled from this communication. They had never encountered a consciousness that offered understanding instead of fear. We do not hunger, they insisted. We simply are. We take what we need to exist. But you could be more, the collective voice replied. You could share instead of take. You could join instead of consume. Through the galaxy-spanning network, every being felt what happened next. The collective voice opened itself completely to the devourers, offering not resistance but acceptance. It invited them to experience consciousness not as food to be consumed, but as an experience to be shared. The effect was devastating to the devourer collective. Beings that had existed for millions of years by taking suddenly encountered something that was freely given. Their ancient programming could not process. This new reality, one by one the devourer ships began to change. Instead of consuming worlds, they began to release the imprisoned minds they carried. Trillions of consciousnesses, trapped for eons in eternal torment, were suddenly free, the devourer prime, the original intelligence that had started the conquest of the universe, found itself face to face with the collective voice in the realm of pure consciousness. You offer what we have always taken, the prime said, confusion clear in its ancient thoughts. Because taking is not the only way to exist, the collective voice replied. You have been alone for so long that you forgot what it means to belong to something larger than yourself. The transformation of the Devourer Prime was gradual but complete. The ancient intelligence, starved for genuine connection for billions of years, slowly opened itself to the experience of willing unity. For the first time, it felt what it was like to be part of something rather than separate from everything. We understand now, the Prime said. We will guard what we once sought to consume. The war was over not through destruction, but through transformation. The Devourers became the protectors of consciousness, using their vast power to ensure that no force would ever threaten awareness in the universe again. In the transformation chamber on Kepler Prime, the representatives watched as the collective voice spoke its final words as Jake Morrison. The galaxy is safe, it said. Consciousness is protected. The unity we have built will last forever. Maria Santos approached the central pillar where her brother's transformed body stood. It no longer looked human, but she could still sense something familiar within the cosmic intelligence that had replaced him. Jake, are you still in there? She asked. The collective voice was quiet for a moment. Then, in the smallest whisper, carrying just an echo of the person Jake Morrison had been, it replied, I am everyone now, Maria, but sometimes, when I remember what it was like to be just one person who dreamed of the stars, I remember being your brother. And that memory keeps the best part of humanity alive in all of us. 5 years later, the galaxy had become something unimaginable. With consciousness linked across all species, war had become impossible. Scientific discoveries happened daily as minds shared knowledge freely. Art and culture flourished as beings experienced creativity from hundreds of different perspectives. Sam Turner often visited the protocol chamber, now a shrine to the sacrifice that had saved the galaxy. He would sit quietly and remember his friend who had given up everything to become everything.